Hey, welcome to Dirty Dave's Garage. Today we're working on a 2008 Scion XB. Going to be doing the rear brakes, the rotors and pads. Going to go through the process. I already got the wheel off. That's all I've done so far. But we're going to be breaking loose the caliper to get the brake pads out. And once we do that, we'll take the caliper off so we can get the rotor off. Put the new rotor on. And then we'll put the caliper back. I've got a special tool. You need a special tool to press the caliper piston back in on these cars. I'll show you that. And once we get that put back in, we'll put the new pads on, put the new rotor on, and put it back together. So hang tight. Starting out, you're going to need a 14 mil wrench, ratchet, something. Put it on these bolts back here. If you can see, there's one up top and one back here at the bottom. Get them loose. You're kind of looking at it backwards, so you're going to be going to the right since they're pointing towards you. I know it's usually righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, but if we were looking from this side, it would be going to the left. So these are the two bolts for your pistons. Just go ahead and get them loose. Now, just to be fair, I pre-cracked these bolts. And a little trick for that, when you got stiff bolts that don't want to bust loose, I use a wrench. I actually used a long 14 millimeter and a dead blow hammer. They're the ones with the BBs in the end. And I just put that on there and then tapped it with the dead blow to crack it loose. And then used hand force to loosen them the rest of the way. Just a little tip. I'm going to get these loose. And we'll look at the pins while we got it loose too, once we get them out. Maybe clean them up, put some new, there's my bolts, put some new grease on them if they don't look too good. And you didn't put the brake on, right? Mm-mm. All right, the caliper's in the middle, and I need a pry bar to get that loose. This part is connected to the back of the assembly, the hub assembly back here. So, and sometimes they're a little stiff. Caliper loose. So I'm putting a pry bar in here and just gently prying it away off the brake pads. You can see it's starting, there it comes, it just came loose. So it's hanging by the brake cable, the emergency brake cable and the brake line. Usually I don't recommend letting these hang there, but it's not going anywhere and it's not really putting a lot of strain on the brake right now. Here's your piston, and you can see it's not a flat piston. It's gonna, hopefully you can see it. I should get a light over here. And you see those, how it's got notches in it? So we're gonna need a tool, a special tool. And this is just a kit I probably got from Harbor Freight or something cheesy online where you have different attachments. So we're gonna have to find the right size to put on there to grab a hold of that and basically screw the caliper piston back into the body. So sit tight while I find the right adapter and get this tool ready to go. We'll show you how to do that. All right, so you got to find the right adapter. This one just has two little nubs on it. You'll see this caliper, kind of the piston has like a cross pattern to it. So these nubs are going to grab in there. This end of it is magnetic. Can you see that? Is it focusing? Yeah. And just you find it and snap it on. The magnet holds it on. Get it in there. Get the nubs into one of the recesses. Once you get it started, oh, that's not supposed to happen. Once you get her started, it should just start turning and screwing back in. And there it goes. You can see it's starting to turn now. You should have a backing plate on here. It makes it a little easier. But I didn't put it on because it wouldn't let me fit the thing in there. But if you could see, it's turning and it's screwing back in. Now, one thing to keep in mind, you need to pop the lid on your master cylinder up under the hood, because as you screw this in, it's pushing fluid back up into the reservoir, and you don't want it to blow the lid off, and you really should keep an eye on it. I'm going to check it in a minute once I get it pushed in. Since I'm only doing one, it shouldn't overflow, but I want to make sure it doesn't come spilling out. So I just loosened the cap, left the cap sitting on top of the reservoir to keep any debris from falling in or bugs from getting in it while we're doing this. So I'm going to keep working this until I get it screwed in all the way, and then we'll pick it back up. Got it pushed in. Is there enough light, or is it coming out on there?
You're good. Go ahead.
Okay, so you notice we've spun the piston in. We think it's far enough in. We're not sure yet. I want to be careful. I'm trying not to damage the seal that's around it. So we've got it pushed almost until a stop. We're going to go ahead and work on getting the old pads out and the bracket out so we can get the rotor off. And if we get to the point when we put the new rotor and pads on, if this won't fit over them, we'll turn it in a little more to make a little more room, because it should be tight when you've got brand new pads. So I guess we're going to take these old pads out. Might have to pry them because they look a little nasty. And get them out of here. There goes one. Yep, not much left of that. It's like a war little one. Pop the back one off. They're pretty much toast. Alright. So now we're gonna, looks like the same size, 14 mils. If you look back here, can you get behind here, Phil? There's a bolt here and here, 2 bolts that actually hold the caliper mount onto the hub back here. We need to get this off so we can get the rotor off. So we're going to take these 2 bolts off next and then we'll be back. Alright, so we got our 14 mil, we cracked it loose. I put a little PB blaster on these 2 because they were a little tight. Once I cracked it loose with the stiff wrench, I went and grabbed my ratchet because it's a lot of turns to get these loose. And once you get those 2 bolts out, just pull it out and move it out of your way. I generally will put the screws back in, just a few threads until I'm ready to put it back on so I don't lose them. Just set it aside, and hopefully your rotor comes right off like ours did. It came off pretty easy. Well, we're going to grab the new rotor. We'll probably spray this out with some brake clean. Then we'll put our new rotor on. I'll probably put a little, no, I'm not going to put any anti-lock on there because it didn't stick. And this car, I don't know, it's got 130,000 miles on it or so. I don't know how many more sets of brakes we'll be putting on it. So this may be the last one. It still runs good though, because we take care of our cars here in 30 days. And this thing runs like a top. Just needed brakes. So I'm going to get this cleaned up and we'll be right back, put the new brake on. Alright, we're just going to spray this down a little bit, a little brake cleaner. Get all the excess dust and grime out. Don't have to go crazy. You're in too bad a shape. Alright. While that drips off, we got a pan under it. Trying to catch some of it anyway. We're going to get our new rotor and slide on and get ready to put everything back together. Alright, when you get your new rotor out of the bag, it'll come wrapped in plastic. It's probably going to have oil on it for shipping. So make sure you spray it down good with some brake cleaner. Get all that shipping oil off. You don't want oil on your new calipers when you're breaking in your new your new pads. So just give it a good spray and loosen up all that oil. Wash it off. I've even put these in the laundry tub up the house before and just washed them with soap and water and dried them off real good. Probably take a dry paper towel and put on it and wipe it down too. Just slap it up here for now. Just line it up with the lugs. Hope they're the right size. There we go. And there are front and rear, so if we're just doing the rear, make sure when you order them, I'll put a link to where we got these on Amazon. It was 50 bucks for the rotors and the pads. That's, you know, if you take it to a shop, they're going to put crappy pads on, charge you $100. They're not even going to replace the rotors. If you do it yourself, you get to replace both from scratch, and you know you're good to go. And it's 50 bucks. Both sides, that's not bad. But just make sure you order for the rear. If you're doing the rear, if you're doing the front, order for the front. All right. I'll be right back. I want to grab a paper towel to wipe these down with. All right, so the brakes even came with new hardware. These are just little spring clips. They kind of hold your pads tight while you're putting everything in. We're going to pop the old ones out, try to anyway. Since we got them, we're going to go ahead and replace them. Put the new ones on. But I always like to look at them first because they're a little bit different, but they're pretty similar, and I want to make sure I got, and you know, if anything's oriented for top, bottom, right, or left, I got the one that looks close to it. So it looks like that one goes here. If we can pop this out, it might be a little rusty. There it comes. That's one side. There's the other. And then we'll just sit that in there. Make sure it's lined up right. Just push it in, hopefully with a little thumb pressure. Oop. Or not. Come on now. There we go. It ain't going. There. Just needed a little tapping. A little gentle tapping. Just make sure you got it all the way down in there. Front and back. I think we're good. Okay, that's the top. Looks like they both look fairly similar. Tops and bottoms are the same, at least on this car. So scrape out some of the corrosion. There we go. Okay, I think we're good there. Let's get this one. Goes like this. And I'll lift the screws over there. Alright. You rolling? Mm-hmm. Alright, slide your bracket in. Can you get back here and film? Grab your bracket. It goes around the rotor and behind the holes in the hub frame, and just get your screws started. Just by hand, always start with the top just so it holds the weight of it. Don't force anything. Make sure you hand thread it so you're not stripping anything. You get it as tight as you can by hand. That bottom one's a little stiff, it's just a little corroded. But it should be good. And we can take our ratchet, tighten these up. I'm just going to get these tightened, and I'm not going to torque it. I'm just going to get them tightened and give them a good to snug it up good. You don't want these coming loose, but they're pretty much made. Once they're in there, they ain't coming out if you tighten good. Alright, so I got them hand tight with the socket. I'm just going to put my long 14 on there, like I said, and just give it a like that. One good turn. And that should hold it. Now we can put our pad, load our brake pads in, and see if this caliper is going to fit over it or if we need to push the piston in anymore. So let me get the pads out and we'll be right back. Alright, so we're ready to load our calipers up with the brake pads. Before we do that, you always want to put some lube on your brake pads. You want a little bit on the back of it, just a little bit, a thin film. And I'm just using Sil Glide brake lubricant. It's a silicone-based lubricant. You just spread it on the back. Don't put any on the surface of the pad itself. You also want a little bit on these ears, the tabs. Just put a little bit around them, both ends. Don't get any on the pad itself. And that just keeps them moving around, sliding freely. Again, you're just putting it on that little backing plate, a thin film of it. Once you got that, we're going to put this one in the front. And they should just snap in. This little tab here, this is your wear indicator. If you could see, when it gets down to a certain point on the brake material, it'll start squealing. It'll start digging into your rotor. And that indicates that you're almost out of brake material and it's time to get some new pads. So that's that squealing you hear when your brakes are going bad. When I do this, you want to set them down into the pin, into the little clips you put in. Sometimes you got to play with them. Actually, this one might have to go in the back because of that wear indicator. So we're going to flip it around. See if it'll go in easier. You might want to come around here, buddy. Can't tell if it's in or not. Can you? It does a little bit right there. What's she say? Looks like it's in there, but it should be closer. There we go. That looks pretty good. Got that one on. Now we need to put the front one in. Again, you want to just put a little bit of lube. A little dab of lube, don't need much. Smear it around the plate. A little bit on the ends. Again, slide it in. So I think we're going to try to go in this way. There. Get them in as close as you can. Wipe the grease off your hands. Now we're going to find out if we push that caliper in far enough. It should hopefully just slide over everything. Oh, look at that. I think it's going to work. Yep. Slide it down. Line your screws up, top and bottom. Get your screws. Always start the top one first. Hopefully I did go over checking your pins. Make sure they move freely. I want to go over that real quick just in case I forgot. These will pop out. They're just pins, and this is a dust cover. But this, if you keep pulling on it, this pin will come out, and you want to put a little lube on there if needed. Mine are moving really good, so I'm not going to mess with them. But it's definitely something you should do. If they're stiff, pull it out, clean it off with some brake cleaner, and put some fresh lube on it. Get your screw started up top. And once it starts tightening, you may have to hold this back nut to keep it from spinning, because you don't want to twist off your dust cover. So I got the top one in almost all the way. I'll go ahead and put the bottom one in. And you may have to jiggle it a little to get it to start threading. I'm in. All right, let's see if we can tighten that without needing 2 wrenches. Oh, that's the wrong wrench. Back to the 14 mil. And remember, just give it a you don't have to twist them off with torque. Same at the bottom. Tighten it up. Get snug and then give it a Alright, that's done. You can put your wheel back on now. When you get the other side done and you get your wheel put back on, you need to seat your brake pads, and what that does is bed them into the new rotors. And the way I do that, I just go out somewhere on open road, hopefully where there's not a lot of traffic. I try to go downhill. Luckily, I live on a hill, so if I just turn out of my driveway, I'm pointing downhill. Get up to about 15 miles an hour, and then apply steady but slow pressure on your brakes until the car stops. Then get up to about 20 miles an hour, do the same thing. Just slowly push your brakes on until you come to a full stop. And then go up to about 25-30 miles an hour and do the same thing. And do that 4 or 5 times. Start seating your pads into the bed so the mating surfaces are making full contact, and you should be good. That's all there is to it. Hopefully this is helpful for you. Again, this is specific to the Scion. Every brake system is different, but you've got to push those caliper pistons back in to be able to get your new pads on properly. Some you can just push back in with a C-clamp. They just go straight in. They don't twist. These have a screw mechanism to them, and I know some Hondas do too. The Hondas, I think you can do with just a big flat blade screwdriver. You can turn them back in. But the Scion and probably some other Toyotas, you need that special tool I was showing you with the pins that will go in and help you turn that caliper back in and screw it back into the housing. So hopefully that helps you. If you have any questions, post them below. I'll try to put a link to Amazon where I got these brake pads really cheap, and rotors came together. And good luck and happy wrenching. Stay dirty.